Today's show is brought to you by two of our favorite organizations, the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh and the Allegheny County Library Association. September marks 10 years of their joint program, Love Your Library. It's really a county-wide celebration where your donation during the month of September will be partially matched and helps keep essential services going. So everything from books and materials to facility improvements and programs for all. If you use the library system, show your love and donate now at loveyourlibrary.org. CityCast Pittsburgh is supported today by the Heinz History Center and their newest exhibition, Pittsburgh's Hidden History. It is a cornucopia of curiosity, a magical menagerie of memory, and a little bit of this and that. There are flowery couches, relics from Kennywood, even a collection of shivs. If you listen to this show a lot, you know we are loving this. It is truly mind-boggling to see how the curators brought together such a wide range of rarely seen artifacts to tell Pittsburgh stories like never before. To buy your tickets and learn more, visit HeinzHistoryCenter.org. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, our town over the years has seen its share of really bad days. Disasters like terrible flooding, brutal windstorms, fires, explosions, even escaped monkeys. Y'all, I'm not kidding. That has happened here more than once. So as our nation's leaders are considering doing away with things like federal emergency response, we are taking stock of all the times it would have been really great to have more help here in Pittsburgh, not less. I'm with friend of the pod, writer and author Virginia Montanez to talk about some of Pittsburgh's biggest catastrophes and any lessons that we have learned along the way. It's Wednesday, September 17th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. Virginia, hello. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you guys again.
Tell me about the monkeys. Let's start with the silly.
So this was the monkeys escaping then it was called the Highland Park Zoo. Today we call that obviously the Pittsburgh Zoo. It was during a heat wave, really bad heat wave, 99 degrees in the city kind of heat wave. And at the zoo, some young boys thought to relieve the rhesus monkeys of their heat. They put a hose into the enclosure. So think that this is a downward, looking down across a moat. Well, obviously the monkeys took advantage of their situation, and the lead monkey, who the Post-Gazette named Adam because he was the first, scrambled up the hose that was meant to give him some cool relief, and 33 monkeys followed him, and that is every rhesus monkey at the zoo. Think about Highland Park. It's not that big of a stretch to jump a few treetops and you're in the residential area. And that's what happened.
And rhesus monkeys are kind of known for being a little bit mischievous anyway. So can you even imagine sitting on your porch in Highland Park and suddenly a monkey swings into your space?
Right. And that's essentially what the residents were warned of. They were warned, close your windows because you will find a monkey raiding the icebox at the time. But also, don't mess with them. Yes, they're cute and mischievous and fun, but if they're wronged or perceived to have been wronged, they will attack you. So it was this funny, but also I'm kind of scared because there's 34 monkeys hanging out and jumping around the trees. But they did, they were returned within a 24-hour space. So it was just 24 hours of, pure chaos in Highland Park.
It's truly incredible. And I just love that this happened more than once. So that was in 1952, but they also had monkey escapes in 1911 and in 1960.
It's just a thing in Pittsburgh. Alligators and monkeys. They get out. I don't get it. I don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you wrote about all kinds of different catastrophes for Pittsburgh Magazine. I fear that the monkeys were maybe the lightest story that we're going to talk about today because some of these are really, really bleak, but they do inform how we live today. So walk us through some of the big ones, what happened, what went wrong, whether we learned any lessons from any of these things. Let's start with the Great Fire because I feel like almost every city has had a Great Fire of some or other year. In our case, it was 1845.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. It's to the point where AI gets confused if you ask about a great fire. Even if you get the city, it gives you all the wrong stuff because everyone has burnt down at some.
Yeah.
But ours was particularly catastrophic in 1845 because it burnt up to a third of the downtown area. So if you kind of imagine what that looks like all the way from, the lower part, so you're down along the Boulevard of the Allies, which is where it started, and go all the way up past like closer into Oliver, kind of. So that's a huge portion of downtown that burnt relatively quickly. We don't know what started it. Don't believe anything that you read about an Irish washerwoman. It was during a time of really bad anti-Catholic sentiment, and the Irish got blamed for a lot. There's no proof that that's just a lore. We don't know what started it, but the thing that came out of that was important was we learned that we can rise up from just a terrible thing that destroys everything about us. This destroyed our entire downtown practically. And then one day we were going to have our economy be decimated. But this kind of showed us we can rebuild. And it also gave Pittsburgh a chance to sort of move on from being like this. We still had a little bit of frontier. Everything was kind of haphazard and it wasn't built right. This let us build into a city, this rebuilding. So some good did come from it, but it was pretty catastrophic.
Yeah, I think it was like 1,200 buildings, something like that, 60 acres. Somehow only 2 people died, although of course a lot were displaced. I do love you're talking about like building into a city because it gave us an opportunity to go from being like, a lot of dwellings and other things all mismatched together. And instead we got to formalize the triangle that still makes no sense.
Right, absolutely. So it's, and there's still little remnants around the city that people are not paying attention to. And I think it's important to still remember that.
I agree. So let's move on and up the river, I guess. The Allegheny Arsenal explosion was just awful. Right there at the foot of Lawrenceville, near where the school stands today. It was during the Civil War, so 1862. Right. And the U.S. Army had this laboratory, this little arsenal where ammunition was being made. And something happened and a whole lot of people died.
Right. This was, for me, one of the more incredibly tragic things I've ever researched beyond just kind of like what everyone knows. 78 people died, most of them. I think 72 of them were young children, young women and women. But most of it, the vast majority, we're talking teenagers, immigrant teenage girls that were at this arsenal making bullets for the Union Army for the Civil War. And the thing is, bullets are meant to create chemical explosions. And unless you're very careful, you're ripe for an explosion. So the best guess we have on what caused that was after delivery of gunpowder, the horse was leaving and its metal horseshoe hit other metal, made a spark, and then there were these terrible explosions. But the descriptions afterwards that the only way that they could tell someone had died was the hoops were still there from their skirts, the steel hoops, but there was nothing else there.
Oh my gosh, my mouth just dropped open.
That's a horrifying, just to think about the heat that came out of these 3 explosions that happened relatively within just a few minutes there at the arsenal. Just truly horrifying. And the other story was one of the victims, I believe her name was Melissa Neckerman. She was quite young, I think 19, just engaged, and the only thing they ever found from her was her hand with her engagement ring on it. So, and she's also the only survivor so far that we know that there's a photo of her, not of her dead, but living. Just a whole lot of horrifying stories that came out of this, and they were just in this breakneck production trying to get ready for Civil War battles. And this was how their lives ended.
Yeah. And I mean, this is where we're at. History is brutal. The next one is devastating in a different way. And because it happened later in 1932, we actually have a ton of pictures of it, too. So I'm talking about the big St. Patrick's Day flood when a ton of snow and rain made the river swell right at what we now call the Point. So all of downtown. And the neighborhood just got covered 46 feet of water, which by any standard back then and today is just way above our flood stage.
The crazy thing with that flood is you have to imagine 20 feet above the flood stage. So this puts the water kind of level with the Smithfield Street Bridge. So think about that.
Yeah, like how high it is. I mean, there are still markers all over downtown. Like you can see in a few spots, like if you look up, you can see like kind of a high water mark for the flood, like even today, almost 100 years later.
And it's high.
It's well over your head.
Especially on the old Horns building, which is now Highmark building. That one is exceptionally high. Again, we're talking about horrible things, but some good did come out of that disaster in that the Flood Act of 1936 was passed that not just a few months later, which made it a little easier between reservoirs and dams to control floods in the future. But so good stuff did come out of it, but just the catastrophe, the visuals, like you said, the photos, I don't think if that happened, I don't know what we would do now. Like, I can't even imagine the devastation.
Yeah, well, I mean, our city is like set up so differently too. Like, first of all, to like actually mitigate floods to some extent. So hopefully nothing like this ever does happen. But like when it does, like when we end up with like what people call the bathtub around here, where all of our parkways and access to the bridges all shut down because it's completely underwater. An entire parking lot and access to downtown gone underwater. Like, it's funny when it recedes and you've got like all this goose poop and like driftwood sitting along like the North Shore and all those sidewalks. But it's also expensive to deal with. And I can't fathom that happening on a large scale given our infrastructure now.
Yeah, no. Sometimes I catch myself downtown when I look at those high water marks, just trying to imagine, we can't let it happen again. Hopefully it won't ever, but I'm always, look where we live. We are low on the rivers here. I think we need to have a healthy respect for those rivers.
Yeah, for sure. We are coming at you today thanks to FA Climbing and Fitness in Pittsburgh. It's over in Station Square on the south side, a premier indoor climbing facility with a lot of space, huge pads to fall on, and a really nice free weight area, plus the nicest staff you can imagine. Whether you have been sending since the days of the Stone Masters or it's literally your first time laying eyes on a climbing shoe, FA Climbing and Fitness in Pittsburgh is here to help. They will show you how to safely fall. They'll give you a nice tour. They have color-coded routes at all ability levels, so you're sure to get a challenge no matter where you're at. And you can also do yoga, try out the gym, sit on the couch and watch the river go by. It's all included in your day pass or membership, which, by the way, if you are hearing this, then you qualify for a BOGO deal. CityCast listeners can buy one day pass and get one free. If you already have a membership, just share it with a friend. Rental gear is all included, plus 2 hours of free parking, and they have student and family passes too. Trust, the climbing community is amazing. You don't have to be good. You just have to be down for a good time. Learn more and get your BOGO passes at faclimbing.com/citycast. Let's climb Pittsburgh. This episode of CityCast Pittsburgh is supported in part by City Theater Company. This fall, they are putting on a play called Another Kind of Silence, written by L.M. Feldman. And if you're a theater aficionado, this one you probably should miss. It's one of the most ambitious productions in city theater history. The play is all about Chap and Evan, who meet each other in sunny Athens, and they fall in love. But the story is not simple because both of these women are already in other relationships. Another Kind of Silence is a journey of language, desire, dreaming. You don't want to miss the bilingual and bicultural world premiere in English and American Sign Language, and you'll leave feeling inspired and hopefully heartened by the show's wanderlust and wonder. It runs from September 20th to October 12th. You can get your tickets at citytheatercompany.com. CityCast Pittsburgh is brought to you today thanks to the Frick Pittsburgh Museum and Gardens and a new award-winning tour of their historic home, Clayton. It's called Gilded, Not Golden. I have taken it, and it's a fresh perspective about the Frick family, all centered on a very big year here in Pittsburgh history. So 1892, the Homestead strikes, the Fricks had a little home construction project going. Someone attacked Henry Clay Frick, and all of this while he and his wife are mourning the death of their child. You'll also learn about Pittsburgh's Millionaires Row and exactly what it took for Frick to get there. He was a millionaire by the age of 30. And you'll see the breakfast room, aka the poker table, where at least a time or two, most of the world's wealth was literally concentrated into a single dining room. History is complicated and this home is special. That's what the Frick wants to share with you. The Frick's Gilded, Not Golden tours of Clayton run Tuesdays through Sundays from 10:15 a.m. through 3 p.m. Get your tickets and learn more at thefrickpittsburgh.org. Well, let's talk about some of what we'll call the lesser known calamities. I feel like those were kind of the big ones, right? Some of these feel a little elemental to me, so we'll attempt some organization here. Tell us about the windstorm and building collapse that happened in 1889.
What I want to say, first of all, is that this was just one of many.
Many windstorms.
Of storms that just blew in out of nowhere and destroyed lives and property. We take for granted our ability to know now. Be careful if you're going out. Be weather aware.
Mm-hmm.
We take that for granted. And there was no real weather awareness, certainly not back in 1889. Other than it's kind of warm in Chicago. It was kind of, they were just doing the best they could with the science that they had.
Yeah, and it really was in its infancy. I think Pittsburgh was actually one of the first cities that had an outpost for what became the National Weather Service. But like, it's limited, like you said, like you get to see what you see.
Right. And it was literally like Pennypacker, his name, up on top of a tower, looking out like, this is what I see.
Yeah.
Right. It's literally like, it's coming. So the windstorm and building collapse that happened in January. And basically, it seemed like this really bonkers weather phenomenon where it was calm one minute, chaos, and then calm. So I don't know in today's terms what a meteorologist would say happened, but it was like ice and wind and snow and horrible wind that was blowing people into the street and collapsing a lot of buildings that were under construction in the downtown area. And it did trap some construction workers that eventually died. And we don't know exactly how many died, but the other thing that this one particularly showed me is that you'll read a lot in these catastrophes that people didn't die right away, but there was no hope for them. Like we knew they were going to die because they didn't have these interventions for internal injuries. You would read these articles, especially after this particular one, where bodies are pulled out of these buildings that collapsed downtown. And it was like, this man works here, he's going to die in the next 3 days. And it's horrifying because it's just like this long wait. So that's another thing we have today that we probably take for granted is our ability to find these invisible injuries and fix them.
Yeah. I mean, credit to you, actually, because I feel like you have a way in your article for Pittsburgh Magazine of talking about these things in a way that feels light, feels approachable, but also like this is some heavy stuff. Like it's really sad what happened to our city.
Absolutely. It's the humanity. We talk about storms and we forget sometimes that what about the people? And that's what always gets me as a historian.
Yeah. Let's move on to water. There were a lot of floods. We talked about the great one, the big one that went up 46 feet, but there were a bunch of others. There was a boat disaster. There's a plane that went down in the Monongahela. Like, walk us through some of these water problems.
So for me, we talk about the ghost bomber quite a bit because it's mysterious and we don't know what happened and that sort of thing. But for me...
Yeah, a B-52 just goes down in the middle of the Mon in 1956, like way after the war. Like, that's a big plane to just like sputter into a river.
Right. And so I get why naturally we want to talk about that, but there were so many more deadly catastrophes that happened on water. The one that really grabbed my attention was seeing video from the Island Queen excursion boat disaster. And that happened in 1947 where, I mean, it is what it sounds like. An excursion boat is on the river. It's planning to take people out the next day. It explodes. And this is during the height of the atomic bomb scare. So you hear this massive explosion and this ray of light shoots down downtown streets. People believe it's an atomic bomb. They're running for their lives down the streets of downtown screaming. But
Virginia, let's back up.
Yeah.
What happened? Like, what caused this explosion that people were running for their lives?
What had happened was it was a torch during a repair. The chief engineer lit the oil tank, the gas tank, and it exploded, immediately burnt up. to see the video, and there is video of this disaster, you can't comprehend what happened to this boat. It looks like just a pile of rubble. It burnt cars along the Mon Wharf. It was just catastrophic, and it did take 19 lives. So this was a very big deal. But the other one, that water floods, as we were talking about, the Butcher's Run flood. So this one happened in 1874 on the north side. Butcher's Run, obviously a little body of water that became just this raging river. And again, we're not quite sure exactly how many people died, but bodies were being swept right into downtown, past, like, further down, finding bodies days later. And there's photos from that too. So for both of these, we can, you can go and do the research and look at what people were dealing with, houses on their sides, just pure destruction. And especially for the Butcher's Run flood, it makes you realize why we need organized response to disasters. Same with the Johnstown flood. Without an organized government entity that comes in and already has all of the stuff prepared, how do you solve these problems? What do you do with these people to help them? And how do you rebuild?
Gosh, I'm just thinking about the Johnstown flood and like some of the imagery from that, because it was a little later, and I think 1889, if I'm remembering right. And like there was so much industry that went through there, which I guess takes us to our next collection, which are sort of like the transportation disasters, Earth, if you will. Like there was a train collision that had a bunch of passengers in it, and there was an incident in the Liberty tunnels, which sounds horrifying. Tell us about the mayhem, I guess.
Yeah, these two are kind of like on opposite ends of the spectrum.
They really are.
To start with the bad on this one, that train collision was horrifying. Like, think about downtown events, how crowded they were, right? We're talking New York City style crowds, Times Square on New Year's Eve style crowds, often in Pittsburgh, especially for political parades, shoulder to shoulder. So what happens is, what happened with this train collision was that this political parade ended, and it's like this mass exodus, go home. At a time when no one has cars, we're all taking the train. So 2 passenger trains over heading toward the south side, so we're near the Union Depot, heading toward the south side, are full. I mean, people hanging off, way over capacity.
Now I'm imagining the trains leaving like a Steelers game, like on the North Shore, when people are just like bumper to bumper, like you're just not making eye contact with anyone.
Right. It's much, much worse. And the thing is, heaving engines with fire and fuel and steam is what's going to kill people here. One train hits the other and explodes the steam boiler. And so a lot of people just were burnt alive. And obviously, long sort of inquest into how this went wrong. And essentially what it was is that the back of the train was so obscured by people. The person that was driving the train behind couldn't see the lights because people were standing in front of them. And this was nighttime. And that's how he rammed into it. That's how crowded this train was. People just hanging on to it, both trains. So terrible, terrible situation. But then we go from that to the Liberty tunnels. I don't know if we can call it a disaster.
Yeah, I thought after all the sadness that maybe the tunnel thing was a nicer place to land. I think incident is the word that I've seen reported most often, which feels right. Like, yeah. It's not quite terrible yet. It could have been, but it wasn't.
It could have been so bad. 1924, the tunnels are new. We don't quite understand how tunnels need to be, what kind of air circulation do we need in these tunnels until there's a trolley strike and everyone's got to take their car into town, creating a massive traffic jam, leaving people stuck in the tubes for way longer than they've ever been stuck before. And these are dirty, burning cars. You got to remember this is in the 1920s. There's no regulations on these things.
And also it's all open air, I think, mostly in the 1920s. Right. Like some cars had glass, but like most of them don't. You're just breathing the exhaust.
Right. We just hit that little button on our car that makes the internal air circulate. They didn't have that. They were just breathing it all in like they were on motorcycles, basically. So what happens is people start just passing out at the wheel. So the people are trying to save people and then they're passing out. So then the policemen are going in and they're passing. It was just like this pyramid of passing out, right? First the motorists, then the helpers. And so people are dragging bodies out. They're reviving cops who are running back in. And then they're pulling them back out. It was just this No, I can say this is funny because no one died, okay? No one died. It all worked out okay. But it was a disaster.
Virginia is capable of writing about something that did not end terribly.
I'm just, I'm like, it's funny. If you can, again, when I say go do the research, do some Googling. You'll find the photos of just people laying at the mouth of the tunnel. I can just imagine driving by it and just seeing people giving oxygen to all these police officers laying there. They were doing a good thing. They were trying to save people, but it was kind of like that running into a burning building without thinking thing.
Yeah.
Can you actually breathe? No. It worked out good in that it taught us a lot about tunnel ventilation in a city of tunnels.
An important innovation, it turns out. I guess as you like zoom out on all of these, if you have any like big takeaways as you've like kind of looked into them about like, I don't know, we've had a lot of bad weather, we've had a lot of chaos. Some of it's by our own, like we've created it ourselves, but a lot of it's just like kind of come upon us. I don't know. Is there anything that feels like a through line or a thing that you've taken away from this?
I think the thing that I learned from all of this, and when you're researching these kind of things, is it exposes for you our mortality and how much little control we have over so much. And it made me grateful for the attempts humans have made to control that which seems that we cannot control it. What can we know about the weather? What can we do to prevent the floods? What can we do about the tunnels suffocating people and them dropping dead? That sort of thing. But it also showed me we do need disaster response. Not even as a political tool to say that, but there needs to be something waiting in the wings for the next disaster. Because so many of these didn't have that, and it just becomes this frantic, what do we do now? So those were the things that really stuck out for me. But also, at every single one of these, every single one, without fail, stories of generous Pittsburghers stepping in and trying to fill that need.
Yeah. Yeah. Being the helper long before Mr. Rogers was around to call it such.
Right. It was neighbors helping neighbors. It was seeing a need and filling it. But the question is, can we know there will be a future need and be ready to meet it?
Absolutely. Well, you can find more about these disasters and more. Virginia wrote about a ton of them for PittsburghMagazine.com. We'll have a link in our show notes. Virginia, as always, thank you so much. Evie, you make doom and gloom more fun, I tell you.
I tried to find a balance because that's life, right? It's doom and gloom, but it's also fun. And sometimes the doom and gloom has moments of fun. So that's history.
That is all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you're listening to Virginia there at the end talking about how emergency response matters and why it's so important, I do think maybe it's worth brushing up on some of the proposals to eliminate it. We have done a podcast about that. We'll link it in our show notes. And also it's affecting other things, like, for example, like our ability to monitor weather patterns, for example, because anytime there are layoffs and we lose some of this historical knowledge, people with a lot of experience, it makes us less able to predict when bad weather is going to happen. Just stuff to be aware of. You can support us by becoming a CityCast Pittsburgh neighbor. All the details are at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow with more from around the city. We'll talk to you soon.
It's wild to me that this story that I included in this article of mine is just one of many monkey escape stories. And I was like, I guess I better use this one because this involves the most escaped monkeys.